Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be taking an early look at the 2024 United States Senate elections. But before I start, I like to say if you like my content, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you know when we upload, and also leave a like and comment. With that said, let's get into it. So as always, I'm going to fill out the safe states first, and as you can see here, we have an independent category, and that's because currently there are 3 independents in the Senate: Bernie Sanders in Vermont, Angus King in Maine, and Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona, who all caucus with the Democrats. But I am going to sort them separately from the Democrats because of Arizona, and I'm going to get to that later. But I'm going to start with the solid Democrat states. So those states are going to be the state of Washington, the state of California, where Dianne Feinstein is probably retiring, the state of Hawaii. Minnesota is going to be solid. Amy Klobuchar is extremely popular in Minnesota. She always wins in landslides. So even though Minnesota might be a little bit closer on the presidential level, I think Klobuchar is going to hang on pretty easily. The state of Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island are all also going to be solid Democrat. I think it is possible that New Jersey gets within 10 because Bob Menendez is not very popular and he's kind of scandal-plagued, but he still got by I think 11 points in 2018. So I do think that this seat is going to be solid, but I will say that I think it could get closer as the election approaches. Here. So now I'm going to fill in the solid independent states, which are going to be Vermont and Maine. Angus King and Bernie Sanders are both very popular in their respective states. I think they're going to win easily if they run. We don't know that they're both running yet, but I can kind of assume that they are going to run. And if they do run, they are going to win very easily. So both these states are solid independent. Finally, I'm going to fill in the solid Republican states here, and those would be North Dakota, both of Nebraska's Senate seats. Ben Sasse actually retired on Monday, I believe, and we don't know who his successor is going to be, but it doesn't matter. Nebraska is a solid red state. This is going to be a solid red Senate seat. Wyoming is also going to be solid red. Utah will be solid red, but I will say it's possible that Mitt Romney faces a primary challenge here. I'm not really sure how that'll go, if it even happens at all, but I think it's worth noting. I think Josh Hawley is safe in Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Indiana are all solid Republican states. I also forgot a solid Democrat state. I believe New Mexico is also going to be a solid Democrat seat. Same with Virginia, actually. I also forgot Virginia. So Virginia and New Mexico both being added to the solid Democrat column. And I actually have one more Republican seat to add to the solid Republican column, and I didn't actually forget this one. I saved this one for last on purpose. I think West Virginia is going to be a solid Republican state in 2024 on the Senate level. This might be kind of a controversial pick, but Joe Manchin, even though he has been pretty strong in his performances recently in 2012 and 2018, he's going to need to outperform the Republican ticket by probably 40 points in order to win this election. And I just don't see that happening. I don't even really see the ticket splitting exceeding 20 to 25 points. So I do think Joe Manchin's going to lose by double digits here. Even though he's won in the past, the polarization in our country right now is so great that I don't think that ticket splitting is going to be large enough for Joe Manchin to even get within 10 in this race. So I am calling West Virginia solid Republican, and that is going to be a flip for the Republicans. So as we can see here, this map is actually very advantageous to Republicans because Republicans only hold seats right now in Texas and Florida of these remaining seats. All of the other ones are held by Democrats. And you see here that Republicans are starting at 48 and Democrats are starting at 43, counting 2 independents that caucus with them. And so Republicans only need to flip or hold 2 more of these in order to hold the Senate or take back the Senate. So now I'm going to fill in the likely states for each party, and there's only one likely state for any party on this map, and that is the state of Pennsylvania. Democratic incumbent Bob Casey is very popular here. He usually wins very easily, and last week he did unfortunately announce that he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, but he said his prognosis is very good and that he doesn't expect it to interfere with his Senate campaign. So I do think he's going to run. I think he's going to win pretty easily, probably by a smaller margin than he won by in 2018 because that was a huge blue wave year. I don't expect this to be a blue wave year, but I do still think Casey's popular enough. He'll probably hang on by 7 to 8 points, so I am calling Pennsylvania likely Democrat. So that is all of the solid and likely states out of the way. Now we can get into the toss-ups. There are 8 toss-ups left. Republicans are starting at 48 and Democrats are starting at 44, counting the independents. So I'm going to go through each toss-up west to east, starting with the state of Nevada. Now, as I've mentioned before, Nevada is a state that has been trending towards Republicans for the last decade or so, and in 2022, it was actually their best swing seat performance other than Wisconsin. I do think Republicans are going to continue to do better in this state, and I do think that the Republican presidential nominee is probably going to win Nevada against Joe Biden in 2024, whether that's Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. However, I do not think that Republicans will be able to flip Nevada on the Senate level. I think that Jackie Rosen is going to narrowly hang on just because she has that incumbency advantage there. And if Catherine Cortez Masto was able to hang on, I think that Jackie Rosen will be able to hang on as well. So moving on, we have a very interesting case here in the state of Arizona. A couple months ago, Kyrsten Sinema, a Democrat, left the Democratic Party and switched to become an independent. And she does still caucus with the Democrats, but it's not entirely clear how this race is going to shape up in 2024 just yet. It's possible that National Democrats back her independent campaign, just like they do with Bernie and Angus King up in the Northeast. But it's also possible that Democrats run their own candidate and we have a three-way race here between the Democrat, a Republican, and Sinema. And I currently believe that it's going to be a three-way race, but a lot of Republicans think that just because it's going to be a three-way race, that Democrats and Sinema are going to split the vote. But I actually think the opposite is going to happen. A lot of people have subscribed to the vote blue no matter who kind of mentality. And so I think Sinema is actually going to split the vote with moderate Republicans, and I think that's actually going to hand the Democrat another victory here in Arizona. So I think if it's a three-way race here, I'm going to call Arizona lean Democrat. And I'm not talking about Sinema here. I'm talking about a different Democrat. Next up is the state of Montana. Right now, Montana has a Democratic senator in John Tester. And Tester is pretty popular for a Democrat here. He's won in 2018 and 2012, I believe. And I think he actually knocked off an incumbent in 2006. So he's clearly a pretty strong presence in Montana. I do still think he's narrowly going to lose, although I do think he is the least vulnerable of the three Trump 2020 state senators. The Democratic senators anyway, which are Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia. Sorry for the spoilers about Ohio. But I do still think Tester's going to go down. You need a lot of ticket splitting here for Tester to win. And even though he does have the incumbency advantage, I don't think it's going to be enough. In 2020, we saw a popular governor, Steve Bullock, the Democrat, run for Senate, and he lost by 10 points, and that was a presidential year, and there just wasn't enough ticket splitting for him to win. And he was also going against an incumbent, which didn't help him, which is why I think Tester is probably going to do better because he does have that incumbency advantage, but I still don't think it's going to be enough for him to hang on. I think he'll very narrowly lose, so I'm calling Montana tilt Republican. Next up is the state of Texas, and this is Ted Cruz's seat. And Ted Cruz won very narrowly in 2018. He only won by about 2 points, which is a shockingly close race in Texas. But I don't think that there's anyone like 2018 Beto O'Rourke who will be able to give Cruz a run for his money like Beto did in 2018. I think potentially Beto could run again, but he's lost a lot of his appeal since the 2018 Senate race. He made a very high-profile run for president, even though it didn't get a ton of traction. And he ran for governor in 2022, losing by double digits to Greg Abbott. Ted Cruz isn't extremely popular, but it is still Texas. I think he's probably going to increase his margin from 2018 by a point or two, so I'm calling Texas lean Republican. Next up is the state of Wisconsin. And Wisconsin really is the epitome of a swing state in the United States right now. It voted for Trump in 2016, it voted for Biden in 2020, and it has one of each party as its senators. This seat is the one held by Democrat Tammy Baldwin, and in 2018, Tammy Baldwin won this seat by about 10 points, or I think it was actually closer to 11. But the national environment that year was a D+9 year, and so the blue wave kind of hit all across the country, including in Wisconsin. I don't think she's going to win by that big of a margin again in 2024, especially a presidential year. If Trump's on the ballot, he might do relatively well in Wisconsin. I think she'll probably hang on by like by like 2 to 3 points. So I am calling Wisconsin lean Democrat. Next up is the state of Michigan. Now, this one would have been considered likely Democrat if not for the fact that the incumbent, Debbie Stabenow, announced last week that she is actually retiring from this seat. She had actually previously announced that she was running again, and so it came as a pretty big surprise when she announced that she was retiring because no one really expected that this seat was going to be competitive at all. But now because it's an open seat, there's a lot of contenders on both sides ready to fight for this seat, and so it is considered to be more competitive now. Now, in 2020 and 2022, Republicans did not have great years in Michigan. In fact, in 2022, Republicans did really horrible in Michigan, and Gretchen Whitmer won by double digits. But I don't think 2024 is going to be that bad of a year for Republicans, at least in comparison to 2022. I do still think that this seat is probably going to be a Democratic hold very narrowly, probably by a similar margin to Wisconsin. So I am calling Michigan lean Democrat. This one's probably the least certain of my calls, at least in terms of margin, because this is the only swing seat where we don't know of the incumbent so far because Stabenow is retiring. There's only one other retirement, and that's in Indiana, but Indiana is going to be solid Republican anyway, so that doesn't matter. This is going to be an interesting seat, and I'm sure there will be more news to come, but for now I am calling it lean Democrat. Next up is the state of Ohio. This is the last state on the map here that voted for Donald Trump in 2020, but also has a Democratic incumbent, and that incumbent is Sherrod Brown. And Sherrod Brown is pretty popular, and he has the Rust Belt appeal that you kind of need in Ohio. But again, this is going to be a presidential year, and Trump or DeSantis are probably going to win Ohio by close to 10 points. And so Sherrod Brown is going to need a lot of ticket splitting here to win. In 2018, Sherrod Brown won this seat by almost 7 points, but again, that was a blue wave year, and 2024 is probably not going to be as Democratic advantage as 2018 was. So I don't think that Sherrod Brown is going to do as well in 2024 as he did in 2018. Functionally, Sherrod Brown is basically like Tim Ryan with the incumbency advantage, and Tim Ryan lost to JD Vance. So I do think that Sherrod Brown probably will narrowly go down, probably by 2 to 3 points. It's going to be very close and a lot closer than the presidential race. But Ohio is trending towards Republicans. And even though Sherrod Brown is the incumbent and does have appeal, I don't think the ticket splitting is going to be enough for him to hang on. Finally, we have the state of Florida. Now, Florida, as everyone knows, has been trending towards Republicans and is basically considered to be a solid red state now, especially after DeSantis' commanding 19-point win in the governor election in November. But I do still think that Florida has the potential to be relatively close. Rick Scott here only won by a fraction of a percent. I think it was the closest Senate race in 2018. And again, blue wave year, but still, it doesn't seem like Florida is really affected by wave years and is more affected by overall trends. I do think Rick Scott is going to hang on here by a couple points. It's going to be narrower than the presidential race. If DeSantis is the nominee, I could see Rick Scott being dragged to the likely margin, or maybe he'll just win by a likely margin anyway because of the way Florida is going. But Rick Scott tends to underperform in Florida, but I do still think he's going to win. So I am calling Florida lean Republican. And with that, we have the map filled all out. I have Republicans taking back the Senate 52 to 48, technically, if you count Bernie and Angus King, which I do since they caucus with them. So this is functionally a 52 to 48 Republican majority in the Senate after 2024. Now, obviously, this is way too early. I mean, we're still several months away from this election, over a year. It's a long time away. But I thought I'd make a video just making my preliminary projections here. Over the next nearly 2 years, this is obviously probably going to change a lot, but I figured why not make a prediction now just to see how it holds up in nearly 2 years. Well, anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like my content, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to make sure you know when we upload, and also leave a like and comment telling me what you think about my prediction and what you think is going to happen. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great day.